Houston is heading to Corvallis to take on Oregon State for the first time since Monday Night Football first telecasted 55 years ago. The Beavers hope to bring Friday night primetime magic this time around.
You are Locked On Coogs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Coogs, the daily podcast about your Houston Cougars. I'm your host, Houston-born teacher and coach Parker Ainsworth, here to talk all things Cougs. Here, Houston fans, the hater came to step by. Thank you for making Locked On Cougs your first listen of the day. Please make first listen each and every day here at Locked On Cougs. We're doing the conversation, but you don't know what to say. Tell us in the comments down below. I'm going to stick with Bucky's treats because I want to ask Spencer McLaughlin of Locked On College Football is here to help us break down the Beavers. Spencer, in all of your world travels, have you ever been to a Bucky's?
No, actually, I've not. That's going to disappoint a lot of people out there. By the way, I'd have to commend your listeners. Can they understand every word you say in your intro?
I feel like I go through it so fast that they just know he gets the part about a
Trust
minute
me, you're not just feeling that.
Today's show is brought to you by our buddies over at Game Time. We got more on that fun later, but Spencer, we've got a fun game this Friday Night Football. Friday Night Light's a big deal in Texas. I want to hear more from you as a guy that covers the entire sport as well as the team that just played Oregon State. What you can tell us about who this Oregon State team is. And then the second segment, I want to look at somewhat of like what a win would look like for these guys because they haven't had one yet. And for the folks stick around for the third segment, we'll also talk about what the Power 4 scheduling mix-up looks like after some movement in that on Monday. Spencer, who are the Oregon State Beavers? What is this? I mean, they're 0-4, kind of power conference, kind of not. Who is this program?
They don't know. That's the problem. When you watch this Oregon State team, and I have several times this year, I hail from the state of Oregon. I've got a lot of Beaver fans. I've talked about this team and program a lot over the years. With Trent Bray as their head coach, a former defensive coordinator, they don't look like a team that has a clear identity. Some of that is personnel limitations, not letting them do what they would like to. And some of that, I think, is, it looks right now like you have a guy who's a coordinator being a head coach. And certainly the move to promote him to head coach when Jonathan Smith left, it was an understandable one. Early on, looked like it was the right move. Trent Bray began his coaching career in Corvallis, Parker, 4-1. 4-1. Do you know?
I know what happens after that.
Yeah. Do you know what his record is since that 4-1 start?
I forget if it was right before or right after Oregon, but it's at 5-11 at one of those 2 points.
Yep. So those of us that are math majors out there, not me, but some of you certainly, 1-10 in his last 11 games. And look, 2 of those games have come against Oregon where you can't reasonably expect to win with the situation they're in. Another one against Texas Tech that should have been more if you were doing things really well, would have been at least more competitive than it was. It wasn't. But, I mean, you have a team that lost to a bunch of Mountain West teams a year ago because that's what their schedule was. And to begin the season, they lost to Cal, who just lost to San Diego State. Like, Cal's been a surprise story this year with their true freshman quarterback, Jaren Kiave Sangopolo-Tele, coming to an SEC school near you if Cal doesn't get their NIL situation together. And then they blew out Oregon State on their home field to begin year 2. And then Fresno State went in and won, and then they got embarrassed by Texas Tech, and then they played a good quarter of football, quarter and a half really against Oregon, and then the talent won out. So but when you watch them play, there's a lot of sloppiness, there are a lot of mistakes, there isn't a clear identity, and I think that's one of many issues that they have right now.
In my vibe watching the Oregon versus Oregon State game, admittedly, I hadn't watched a lot of Oregon this year, but it felt more like the first half looked like a team that spent the week practicing for Penn State, not spent the week practicing for Oregon State. Now, I could be wrong there, but that certainly was how it felt like to me. I look at this Bray guy at 5-11. It is just year 2. It is a really hard situation moving out of the Power 4, Power 5, I guess, because it's no longer a 5. But is he a hot seat candidate kind of guy?
Yes.
At 5-11, at 1-11, or 1
No,
in the last
he
11?
is. I mean, you're right that there's no precedent for it. That is undeniably true. I think, at least on the West Coast, and we've had leagues come and go, but from what I can remember in my life as a college football fan, which admittedly is not as long as you or some other people that might be listening to or watching this show. Okay. Yeah, there's nothing really like it. And even with tempered, reasonable expectations, the 4-1 start last year, didn't think that was going to continue. But either last season or this season, they should have been able to find a way to have a 7 or 8 win campaign. Well, that didn't happen last year. That's not going to happen this year. It is a tough spot to be in. It still looks worse than it should. It really does. They went out and got one of the 5 best quarterbacks to move in the transfer portal in the offseason, 5 to 7, in Malik Murphy. I was high on Malik Murphy. He led Duke to a 9-win season last year. Okay, they found $1.5 million in NIL to give him because they wanted to they realized that you've got to invest, even if you're at the group of 5 level. And they went out and got one of the best transfer portal quarterbacks. That's a guy, Parker, who on my college football show I talked about as somebody that Auburn should go get.
Yeah, Houston fans would be familiar because his time at Texas overlapped that 1 year that both teams, Houston and Texas, were in the Big 12 together.
Yep.
And actually, in the game Houston hosted Texas, and I still argue Houston should have won that game, Quinn Ewers goes down with an injury, and Malik Murphy comes in for a few drives. Like, it's different coordinators, different coaches, different players for Houston at this point, but fans will probably remember him when he walks on the field. He's a pretty strong athlete.
Yeah, he is. He's a big guy. He's not much of a runner, but he's got a big arm, and he can make some really good throws. But does he always have the right support system around him to make those throws? No. The offensive line, the PFF grades are dreadful. The results on the field match that. He's coming off his worst game as a Beaver this past week against Oregon. He went just 5 of 18 throwing the ball. Before that, though, he was throwing for almost 300 yards a game. And Oregon's defense, their secondary in particular, is playing at a really high level. Their defensive line's got way more talent than the Beavs. Now, I think on paper, Houston should as well. I don't think the Cougs up front are as strong as what Oregon has defensively. So, Oregon State should be in a better position there, and they're playing at home, but that doesn't mean it's necessarily great. They've had to throw the ball a lot, though, to boost his passing yardage because they haven't been able to run it. And Trent Bray came from a system under Jonathan Smith that was, what Jonathan Smith is running up at Michigan State, or I don't know that there's actually an example. Utah, before Devin Dampier arrived, it is what, I think Trent Bray wants his offensive system to be. A lot of one-back sets, a lot of under center, power run, play action. That's kind of the foundation of it all. Their offensive line doesn't let them do that. It's not good enough. They don't have the guys up front. And so they went and got the quarterback in the offseason, who I think is good, and he can be. They don't have enough pieces around him. They've got a couple decent weapons on the perimeter, but if you don't have the time to throw the ball to them, well, it doesn't really matter a whole heck of a lot. So back to your question about the hot seat conversation for Trent Bray, I think it's absolutely warranted because you shouldn't expect Oregon State at this point to be, a top 25 team, a conference title contender going into next season. Well, next season. But for this year, there is no conference championship. They coming into this year, I thought they'd be a 7-8 win team, and they're probably going to miss a bowl game unless they radically turn it around in the back half of the schedule and, frankly, beat Houston, or else they're going to be 0-5. So it's not an acceptable place to be, in my view, even given the difficult situation. And there are absolutely legitimate discussions about whether or not Trent Bray will be Oregon State's head coach by the end of this year. Because after Houston, Parker, it's Appalachian State. That's a respectable G5 program, and I believe that game's on the road. You can't be 0-6 and keep your job in year 2. Year 1, okay, you can write off anything. I was prepared for Houston to go 2-10 last year and still say Willie Fritz is the guy. They didn't. But I was ready to have that conversation if it came to that. And then Willie Fritz did really well, of course, but Trent Bray, it feels like they've taken a step back, even though at the most important position, they are more talented than they were last year, and that's a problem.
I want to talk about what that desperation could lead to and what a win might look like as Spencer's watched them, and they haven't got one yet, but kind of what kind of things they have to put together to win a football game in the second segment. Before we get to all of that fun, today's show is brought to you by our buddies over at Square. Now, Square is your favorite neighborhood spots running all on the same app. Now, certain businesses truly make neighborhood feel like home, whether it's local sports bar, coffee shops, corner deli, been serving community for decades. These are places that bring people together in Houston. That is exemplified in Cochinita and Company. Now, this is a place that started off as a small, independently run shop in 2016. Now it has a big standalone brick and mortar, much bigger, stronger, etc., all because they run their daily activity through the Square app. Square is a proud partner of more than 4 million neighborhood businesses around the world. You can go to square.com/go/lockedoncollege to learn more. But before you go support your favorite neighborhood spots. You'll be happy that you did Square. See you in the neighborhood. Today's show is also brought to you by everybody over at Game Time, because college football is back, and we could not be more excited to watch winning Houston Cougar football once again. The tailgates, the rivalries, energy in the stands, there's nothing like it, but let's be real. Actually getting tickets can be more of a battle than the game itself. Endless queues, hidden fees, prices jumping at checkout. That's why I use Game Time. The app gives the advantage back to the fans. It's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. What you see is what you pay. Right now, you can get into Houston and Tech on October 4th, the next Houston Cougar home game, the blue game where you blue and cheer on the Coogs, as weird as that may sound to some folks. For less than $80, it's really, really reasonable. It's all over the place. Some great value deals as well. You can see exactly what your view is going to look like from your seat, wherever it is in the stadium. Take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. Park Rangers are joined again by Spencer McLaughlin, who I guess the hat you have on figuratively here is Locked on College Football, talking to us about Oregon State, but also a rival near and dear to your heart, sounds like, in the Oregon side of things. So without making you pick there, Oregon State has not won a game this season. We just argued that their coach is very much a hot seat kind of guy. They don't have, they have a bunch of guys that stuck this out with him on the defense side of the ball. They don't have a lot of guys leaving Coach Bray's side. With desperation comes elevated play typically. What would a win look like for this program? What is like a winning formula for the Beavers?
This would be a narrative shifting win. Houston is a good team. Some people power rated Houston as a top half team in the Big 12 this year. Some people with podcasts and a platform to talk about the sport said, Houston, look at that.
It's still
look
there.
at that. And Kansas State, get them out of there. Everything else, I feel pretty good about that list right now, by the way. Arizona, Arizona is my big whiff in the bottom half. Kansas State is my big whiff in the top half. Everything else, I'm standing by that right now. I feel really good about that list. Sometimes you make something like that and you go, I don't know if, well, we'll see how it goes. Nope. Other than those two, yep, those are whiffs. No one's ever batting 1,000 on these things. So, anyway, if they beat a good Big 12 team at home, it would completely shift the narrative I was just discussing, which is, wait, maybe Trent Bray is going to figure it out. Wait, now these games on the schedule look way more winnable. Whereas now, I don't know where Oregon State, I think they'll win a game eventually. I don't know how it's going to be more than 3 at this rate. And you can't go backwards year 1 to year 2 and have true job security. But this win against a good Power 4 team, yeah, that would be huge. Huge for Trent Bray. Huge for the program, for the fans as well. And that's something I'm interested to see in this game. Reser Stadium, I have watched teams go in there that are not as good as Oregon State and lose all the time over the years. It is a great home field environment. It is a great fan base who, though they can annoy the crap out of me and have my entire life from the time I was a kid, I respect those fans a heck of a lot. And I also want to be clear, I hate what's happening to them right now. The whole thing It sucks. It absolutely sucks. And so with that in mind, I wonder what those fans are going to do on Friday night, because they love their Oregon State sports. They love football, but you can't love this Oregon State team right now. They are not a fun watch. It's not like they're struggling, or it's not like they're, falling close or losing tight game. They're just getting waxed week in and week out, aside from Fresno State, which was its own form of disaster. So 3 of their 4 games, I wonder if it's going to have the same level of juice. I hope it will, because it's a fun environment, but I don't know if it will have the same level of juice that it usually does, because that fan base, I'd imagine, is pretty dejected right now.
I argued on this show that Houston had a pretty big advantage against Colorado because they played them so early in the year. Colorado didn't know a whole lot about themselves. Do you think playing Oregon State on a Friday night helps Oregon State at all? Houston is coming off of a bye, so it's not like a short week in the traditional sense. But is a Friday night a good thing?
That actually that helps. That helps Houston. Less prep. I mean, Friday night games have a tendency to get crazy. The spread, according to our friends at FanDuel, is up to 12.5 in favor of the Cougars. I'd probably lean Oregon State, maybe because it's a Friday. But then again, what's Oregon State's motivational level? Are there players in the locker room that read the writing on the wall, which is, our head coach is not going to be here at the end of the year. What are we even playing for? I'm trying to put something good on tape so I can go find a new home next year. I don't know. When you're having a season like Oregon State, think about Florida State last year. Everybody reaches their breaking point. Florida State reached a point in that season, you could tell when you watched, they quit. They quit and said, we're done, get us out of here. We don't want to play football. They're not playing with the same intensity level. And I don't know, I don't remember exactly which game, but you could tell in the second half of the season, they mailed it in. They're done. So at some point, Oregon State could hit that level. Are they there right now? Or do they realize, okay, we're done with game. There's no game on Oregon State's schedule that's impossible to win. That's inconceivable. Okay, it's inconceivable mostly that they'd go on the road and beat Texas Tech, especially knowing what we know about Tech now. Some people had them number 1 in the Big 12 coming in this year. It's inconceivable that they would go into Autzen Stadium and beat Oregon. But there's no game on the schedule that you look at and go, they've got no shot of winning the game. No, they do. They do in every game. So can Trent Bray get them to refocus and get rid of the stupid stuff? Because it's the penalties, it's the sloppy play, the turnovers. This has been, unfortunately, the identity of Oregon State this year. I mean, did you see the punt against Fresno State, Parker?
Yeah.
Oh, gosh. That sums it up. Bad snap. You know what they did against Oregon? This is 100% true. I swear I'm not making this up. When they punted against Oregon, because the snap issues have been so bad, they put the punter closer to the center and didn't give him a chance to do a proper windup because they didn't trust that the ball would get all the way back to him 15 yards deep. They put him 10 yards deep.
So you mentioned that sometimes teammates can get dejected, locker rooms can get dejected. Last quick short answer question on this one. It is Friday Night Lights. Friday Night Lights famously, as a TV show, had a character named Tim Riggins who'd kind of rally the troops when it was time to rally the troops. Does Oregon State have a Tim Riggins that can get one for the Gipper kind of speech in the locker room before they come out of this one?
I think Malik Murphy. There was an incident earlier this year where he was confrontational with a coach on the sideline amidst offensive struggles. I think it was in the Cal game, and I think some people saw that and felt like that's not what you want to see. It's a sign of bad thing. I didn't interpret it that way. I saw it as he wants them to be good. He's not there because he got a solid NIL offer and he wants to cash a check. He almost transferred to Oregon State for 2024. He visited there. It was one of his finalists. He wound up going to Duke, and then they went in a different direction with Darian Mensah, and he said, okay, now I'm ready for Oregon State. And I just think that's somebody who, if he's got the respect of the locker room, can do that. But again, it doesn't matter if you've got Newt Rockne himself coming out of the grave to give a motivational speech. If you don't have the talent and you don't have the right scheme to go up against a team like Houston, doesn't matter, man. Doesn't matter.
Now I know Spencer will be. I can't tell if it's hate watching, love watching, fondly.
I don't. I can't. I talked about this on Locked On Ducks going into the rivalry game last week. It sucks that this is what it feels like. You know, it's not a big game. Winning isn't satisfying. Winning is expected. It's, you know, the shine of what is usually one of the most intense sports weeks of the year for me as an Oregon fan is almost entirely removed, because you just look at it and the way I see it is like, I pity him. There's no other way for me to feel. It feels bad, and it's like, I hope they can get back up one day, because it's more fun when that game means something. Like in my lifetime, back in 2009, the winner of the Civil War was going to the Rose Bowl against Ohio State. They were playing for a Pac-10 championship. And now you come in and Oregon's a 34.5 point favorite. Like, I'm sorry, that's not as fun. So no, I'll be watching, because I'll probably talk about it on my show and react to it and see what the heck happens. But
you're calling me old and referencing the Pac-10. I would also point out you made a get 'em up reference, and this is not a Rugent day on the advertising spots here, Spencer. So we got all kinds of stuff going haywire here, but Spencer's going to go talk about other college football programs across the country at Locked On College Football. Spencer McLaughlin. We're going to sit here and talk about what just happened with the ACC and all four power conferences.
Great for college football. Great. The Big Ten needs to require a Power 4 non-conference game, and everything will be right. The power brokers are listening to me, and I love it.
Sounds like Spencer's got his thoughts. Go check him out as well. Stay tuned with segment 3.
Today's show is brought to you by Mazda, who crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Mazda delivers confidence every ride. I tell you all the time, I drive a Mazda. I have a toddler. The fact that the Mazdas have more IIHS Top Safety Pick awards than anyone else as of August 2025 is a big deal for me as I pick a vehicle. It was a big deal for me when I was picking my most recent vehicle, and you can feel the craftsmanship, you can feel the control. It makes an everyday drive feel like anything but every day. Like the player for the Houston Cougars, we sweat every detail with our Mazdas. When you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. Park Ranger Locked On Coogs here, and as Spencer alluded to, college football just changed for the better. The ACC as a conference and the fourth Power 4 conference do so officially makes it all four power conferences requiring teams to play 9 conference games and 1 game against a different Power 4 opponent. Okay, so the Big Ten doesn't quite have that last stipulation, but most of those schools do that anyway. That means that almost every school in the Power 4 will play at least 10 Power 4 games out of their 12-game slate every year. Now, we'll talk about why this hits Houston, the Big 12 in a second, but I should point out, in the ACC, some of those schools did have multi-Power 4 non-conference games. The way that this works in terms of hierarchy or superseding is that having 10 Power 4 games supersedes all else. So those schools, for the time being in the immediate future, with pre-scheduled games and predetermined this and predetermined that, those schools will be allowed to play 8 conference games while they work their way towards the 9, with the 10th being a non-conference game. That's an ACC problem, but I think it is worth noting. Listen, Houston, given the unique Oregon State situation, got them scheduled as a power conference team, even though they're not really a power conference team anymore in any aspect. So they don't really have one, but the typical Big 12 school will play a Power 4 game, a FCS game, and a Group of 6 game as the 3 non-conference teams. You occasionally get someone like the Baylor rivalry. They'll get in an SMU, or TCU gets an SMU kind of rivalry game in there as well. And sometimes that makes it 2 non-conference Power 4 games. Houston currently has 2027 and 2028 booked. So they have 2025 and 2026 with Oregon State, 20 2027 with LSU, and 2028 with Oklahoma. As you're looking at 2029, 2030, 2031, you're seeing more vacancies. And what this is going to create is all of the Power Four teams are going to have to find ways to fill those vacancies with one another. I think Houston being in a primo location, obviously being the city of Houston, place to want to go there and show off their program in front of recruits in a big way. Deion Sanders talked about this as a conference game very openly and honestly with people that would listen to him. I think it's a big advantage for Houston to be in Houston in that instance. I think you can expect to hear more ACC and SEC teams looking to add Houston in those windows or add other Big 12 schools in those windows in 2029, 30, and 31, because honestly, they kind of have to. The SEC did this a few weeks back. We took notice a little bit of it back then. But as you're looking at what this means for the conference as a whole, I think it's a good thing for the Big 12 because now you're going to get more direct comparison points. We talked on Monday how the Big 12 demolished the ACC in non-conference play 6-1 over the course of those games. They also played a couple close SEC games, and it stands to reason that if you had more of those on the schedule, some of those might have gone your way. 0-3 in close ones. You were 2-2 at the Big 10. Adding these games is a big step. It also, for a school that just got out of the group of six, means there's less slots for those group of six schools to fit themselves into Power Four conference schools. I think you can anticipate watching other group of six schools that have like playoff aspirations, the Boise States of the world, etc., to be looking to schedule themselves with Power Four opponents further out as far as possible and get in on the schedule where they fit in, because Power Four opponents are about to only have 2 opportunities per year to play those programs. Now, Houston's actually already got Boise State, the one I mentioned, on the docket in 2028 or 2030 and 31, I should say. But I think you can anticipate seeing other high-end group of six programs trying to fit in those windows as well. Do you see Oregon State and Washington State trying to prove their worth by getting as many of those games in as they can? Do you see a Wyoming? We heard about on the Big 12 squad how tough it is to play in Laramie. Do you see Wyoming trying to fit in somewhere? Do you see, I don't know, USF knocked off a couple big dogs early this season? They're building a program in South Florida, kind of South Florida, I guess it's called South Florida, to get into some of this action. Tulane and what they've built there, are they trying to get on people's schedules, right? Across the board, I feel like you're going to see a lot of these competitive group of six teams with a lot less spaces kind of shrink in number, because when you look at resume, if you look at a Memphis with no Power Four wins and you look at a Tulane with 1 or 2, suddenly that Tulane team looks stronger. Obviously, those two teams being in the same American Conference is a little different than if you had one like the Mountain West or something, but you catch my drift, right? The idea here being that ultimately this is shrinking the opportunities for the group of six to make that name for themselves, so to speak, and opening up for Houston and other Power Four teams to really make an advantage for themselves in scheduling. Now, I know Houston fans want to see big time programs come through TDECU and play true Houston home games. I think as you see this program build and develop, you see more investment into the facilities. They just built a big expansion of the football facility from a usage standpoint, not necessarily from a seating standpoint. I think you're going to see a lot of schools really look at it. In the meantime, though, let's just be honest. The way that Houston, Oklahoma played back in the Baker Mayfield game in NRG, that's going to kind of be what other schools are looking to get out of this. And I think, honestly, if you're Willie Fritz and company, you take those deals. I know that's not quite the dollar amount that a true home game might bring you necessarily, but it's a chance to build a proving ground for a rebuilding program. And I think Willie Fritz is ahead of schedule. I think most of y'all think Willie Fritz is ahead of schedule. But honestly, if that's what it takes to rebuild the program and you therefore get a bigger dog to meet you at NRG for your, quote, home end of the game, and then you beat them on national television in a big non-conference Power Four game, then you can, play it up for the next set of contracts, right? You continue to build this thing out. It's a big picture, macro level kind of thing that you kind of start on early. Houston does have the schedule set, so I would look to see in 2029, 30 and 31. But don't be surprised if in the next 4 or 5 months you see someone schedule Houston in a Power 4 versus Power 4 kind of situation that far out, because several conferences now have to. This is great for the sport. As Spencer said before he signed off, this is great for the sport. All Power 4 teams will have to play 10 Power Conference games, and that means a much more even playing field as you look at teams' records. Now, all Power 4 schedules are not created the same. We compared this year's Houston schedule to last year's Houston schedule a lot in the offseason, and those two schedules are not the same, right? A team that goes 7-5 in last year's schedule is not the same team as if one that goes 7-5 in this year's schedule for Houston. That's the case across all power conferences. However, they're much closer, and I think that's the big deal here. Is things are getting closer. And I think that's something to be paying attention to. We'll be paying attention to all of it each and every day here at Locked on Coogs. So hit subscribe, hit the bell so we go live. We're going to go live after Oregon State this Friday night into the wee hours of the Saturday morning. So we'll be breaking things down. They are hitting it all week long here. Got some people to talk to throughout the week. So make sure you pay attention to what we got coming out each and every morning. Locked on Coogs, a primarily Locked on podcast network. That means your team every day. Go Coogs.